Welcome back to the League of Inches podcast season reviews. Once again, the North Queensland Cowboys are up this time, and a very odd one. We feel like, especially on this page, all throughout the year, anytime we've spoken about the Cowboys, it's just been a mixed bag. It has been a licorice all sorts. It's just you don't know what you're going to get, what color's going to pop up with your bit of licorice that you get out of the bag. And in terms of the Cowboys, just they finished well. Let's talk about the season first of all. They finished fifth, 36 points, 15 wins, 9 losses, and a plus 89 points differential. Great year. They've had a good year. There were some players that we'll talk about that were scrutinized a little bit, and to still finish like that with some of these players on their books and playing quite big roles in the season, it's a really good finish. And there was always that sort of elite bracket in this competition this year that they weren't ever quite up to, but they pulled out some good games. They were attacking juggernaut at times, the Cowboys. I guess the problem for them, there was always this talk about the defensive side of the game, and they weren't really up to that point of view. Maybe that's why we'd never really, I guess, rated them in a way. And I know there was a few Cowboys supporters that messaged in the page and comments and stuff throughout the year and weren't too happy with some of the comments made. It was just, and we still sit here now, me and Trav along for this one. We don't know. Trav, when you think of the year for the Cowboys, what jumps to your mind? Because if you're like me, you are confused.
I still am. Hey, like the first thing I wrote down, right? And I can show you on my notes. The first thing I wrote down was pass mark ? And I went, and then I sat there and I thought, pass mark ? They finished fifth, 15-9. Like they finished fifth. Like, why am I even asking that question? Surely that's a pass mark easily. But I'm sitting here thinking, you know, that we're questioning that. But you kind of have to. Like, I feel like you end up having to, because at times their defense is horrendous. Like, I'm sorry to say it, and I keep harping on it, and people have called me out for it over in the comments, and good on them. Like, I mean, protect your team and do what you've got to do. I don't have a problem with it, but yeah, like I'm just calling it as I see it. And at times it was horrendous defense, and it was, and as you said, like, maybe it is because of that defense, but in the top 8, they were 40. I think it was 40 points worse defense than any other team in the top 8. So, like, it was the worst defense based on the stats in the top 8 system. So, yeah, like that, yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Like, this might be a quick one.
You can't win a competition with that number. It's plain and simple, and that's potentially why I guess we never were very high on the Cowboys, just because of, statistically speaking, if you don't have a good defensive record, you would not win the comp. There's no point in talking them up and giving false hope to a lot of fans throughout this year, because they just weren't there when it mattered for the defense side of things. And there was other teams that finished below them, like the Dogs, for instance, who had a much better side of that game in defense and looked stronger. But then we talk about, like, their attack was humming. There is no doubt in my mind, if this game was purely attack, the Cowboys are a top 4 team every day of the week. They've got the Drinkwaters, they've got the Deardens. Then you look at their backline that was on fire. We'll talk about Kyle Felt. We'll talk about all those sorts of people. Their attack side of the game, Travis, we're not questioning that at all. Like, they are juggernauts of the attacking game.
Yeah, they are. 100%. Like, and that's what we talked about all year. I mean, they scored 657 points for the year. I think that averaged out to 27 a game. Like, that's ridiculous. That's really good. There's a reason why you finished fifth, but there's also a reason why you didn't make any further, didn't do much in the finals. Is because you don't have the other side of it, right? Like yeah. I mean, the other thing too is, and why a lot of us slept on the Cowboys, is because they started so hot at 5-1, then they went and lost 5 straight, right? And they went on these crappy runs. Like, and that's the thing, right? That's why we were so off them at points in time, because they just couldn't string a game. They couldn't string those games. And then you get to them at the end of the year, and then they go and beat through the middle of the period, then they beat the Roosters, then they beat Penrith. And then they ended the year like they did. Like it's where they only just beat the Storm, with Storm having literally 11 of their starting 13 out. Like it's they're a hard one to judge. They're an attacking juggernaut. Their statistics show that. Like they were 6th for points. They were 2nd in the comp for meters gained. They were 3rd for line breaks. They were 3rd for tackle breaks. They were 15th for offload, so they didn't offload very much. They were 4th for errors, and they were 12th for completion rate. Like across the board in the attack, that's a really good attack. Like those numbers are really, really good. But as you said, defense does not win your competitions, and it only gets you so far. And just the hot and cold nature of what they had, like it's a hard one.
It is, and that middle patch, as you said, that was a killer. Not really the middle patch, but that sort of round 6 all the way through to round 10, where they lost, I think it was 5 in a row. They just looked rudderless at the time. And I remember we were talking about him back then, and it was sort of on the page, and we were almost writing them off. We just said that Todd Payton's got to go. The club doesn't seem like it's quite there. And before we go into a couple of the player side of things, Todd Payton, his 5th place finish will help him, I feel like, and we'll ease a little bit of the pressure off him. But they need to start well in 2025 and really start to go on with that year, because in my opinion, they've got a really good on paper roster that should be challenging more than they did in the competition this year. Again, 5th place looks great on paper, but the fact of the matter is when it got to the business end and where you need to win those games, they just seem to be a bit off the pace. And you can't be like that in this competition. You'll get found out, as they did, unfortunately. So I have Todd Payton with a little bit of pressure coming into 2025, not heaps because of that 5th place finish, but boy, there's pressure on their start.
Yeah, I think there's more than I actually think there's a lot more on the pressure on Todd Payton than what you're saying. That they saved themselves with a decent end to the year, and what they had, and Todd Payton certainly saved himself, because there was a lot of chatter throughout that year about him on the verge of getting sacked, and he bloody well should have had that conversation happen, the way that he was doing and what he was coaching, and the mistakes that they were making, and even not even just the mistakes they were making, the losses. Like they lost to the Broncos at home by 24 points. On the back of beating the Tigers by 18, then beating the Sharks the week before that by 8. What they did was they lost these crappy games, or these games by so much at key moments in time, and it just kept that conversation happening, and that's the pressure that the scoreboard pressure does. He needs a really big preseason. He's got some big holes he's got to fill too. There's some plugs that are about to leave that I don't know if they've got to replace, which is more of a preview. But you're losing Felt and you're losing Holmes. Like there's 2 big holes you've got to plug.
And part of this reason, I guess, that brings the Todd Payton factor into it is you talk about Jason Taumalolo, and I've got here the JT problem, because I feel like in a way it's become that. But then I looked at it, and if we did this before the Pacific Championships had played out, I would have been a lot more critical of this. I then watched the Pacific Nations, and I see a Tongan Taumalolo who was back into prime beast mode. Like he was just ridiculous. And I start to go back and question Todd Payton handling of this situation and think, okay, this is back onto Todd Payton and what the pressure gauge, where is it at, and is it up a bit further? Because he's been harping onto the media about this and how he's handling it the right way, and Jason's not the player that he was anymore, and we've all got to believe that because we haven't got to see him, I guess, get to where he got to in this Pacific Championship. We see him pull on this red jersey of Tonga and go back, and we're thinking, this is the guy that everyone know and love. This is the guy that could do silly things on a week-to-week basis on the NRL field and was playing good quality minutes. Now, the Jason Taumalolo problem at the Cowboys, if it's under Todd Payton, it's a huge problem, because you can't be paying someone close to $1 million a year and have him playing the minutes that he's been playing. It just simply won't work, and it impacts your salary cap a hell of a lot. And it's a problem that needs to be sorted out. It's either put a Tongan jersey underneath that Cowboys jersey and let him turn into that player a lot more next year, or you've got to do a smart business decision and start to shop him around somewhere to at least ease some kind of salary cap pressure and get to someone else, get to a youngster, because it seemed like it was, again, a fairly decent sized problem, Trav, this year, the JT effect.
Yeah, definitely. And I had the same things. That's why I was laughing when you were taking it just then about Taumalolo and what he was able to do on the international stage for the last 3 games, and then went, well, hang on a second, where the hell was this for the year? Like, he clearly can do it still, or he can do it in spurts, right? So give him the spurts. You lose a couple of games, whatever. Taumalolo, you're about to go play 60, go on a beast mode, off you go. Like, but he didn't do it this year. And it's not saying that he had a bad year, because he didn't have a bad year. But what he put through during the year to what we saw him play for Tonga is a whole different beast. And so you have to ask the question as to Todd Payten, what the hell have you done? Why are you doing this? Like, this is on you. You're the one who's minute restricting him, because clearly Taumalolo doesn't want that. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's certainly something he has to fix. And next year, we're going to be asking the same questions, because Taumalolo is another year older.
Yeah, no, 100%. One other player that was questioned a fair bit this year, he has, as you mentioned just then, has departed the club now, so he's not a problem for the future. But this year, he seemed to be a small problem. Was Val Holmes? I felt like his form wasn't quite there. Funny, because I think a lot of super coaches were still happy with his all-around game and the scores, which was a weird one. But then NRL side of things, this is why it's sometimes funny to compare both games there. He didn't seem to quite be there. There was a few defensive issues once again, which is convenient because that's been the Cowboys, I felt like, story of the year. There was some defensive deficiencies there in Val Holmes' game this year.
Yeah, there was. I feel quite harsh. It's one of those things where I kind of feel really harsh when I talk about the Cowboys altogether, but I certainly feel harsh when I talk about Val Holmes, because he had a for his standards, we're all talking about that he didn't have a great year, but yet I still think he did have a good year. Like, and I feel really harsh to talk about it. His stats were still very, very close to his normal, if not better. But he's a really big hole that they've got to plug this year, and I just next year, and I don't know how they're going to be able to do it. Like, his kicking game this year was I think, based off his stats, was one of the better years that he's had. Like, that's that's for an attacking team, you need that. So that's an interesting hole they're going to have to plug next year, and then and it's also the fact that he locks in the wings, the tries that he puts, the attacking power that he has, the amount of ball that he starts with in attack that he's been able to produce for them, and he's been that lock. Like, they've been able to lock him down. Like, they know he's one of the first players that they're able to list down and lock into their list each and every week. That's a hard thing to replace. Although they basically told him that he's got to go, but
yeah, it'd be an interesting one to talk about later on down the track for some of the positive players. I felt like, in my opinion, he just sort of continued to go, and his motor it didn't stop. And he was the big call at the start of the year was the captaincy and having it change from where it was at with Townsend and Taumalolo, and moving it on to the fresher men in terms of Reuben Cotter and Tommy Dearden, and now bring Tommy Dearden into it. I thought both players actually proved that decision by Todd Payten was the right one, because both were their best players of the year, in my opinion, and actually led by their actions. I don't know, they were probably great with their words as well, but what I was going off watching the Cowboys was their actions on the field, and most weeks their best player was either one of those two, with the other one very close behind, and that's what you want from your leaders, in my opinion. This is a football club. They're not there to be politicians. They're there to be 80 minutes and give us what you've got. And I thought both of those players were huge for the Cowboys, and probably the big reason why they did finish 5th in a year that I feel like many people out there question how they finished 5th.
Yeah, as we've done in this podcast. I love to shout out. I wrote the same thing. Dearden and Cotter, the co-captaincy that they've made. I think that was a wonderful decision, and we can look at it 12 months down the track and say what a great choice. How good are they to have? What perfect players to put as a captain, right? They're just that perfect modern day role model for a competition team. Like they lead with heart, they play with heart, they play with soul, they just play with grit. It's just perfect. Like that they're positive all the time, and if they make a mistake, they get up and they cheer everyone on, and then they move on, and then they're the one that's in the next hit up to go, and particularly Connor's on the next hit up, he puts his head over it and says, I'll take the next hit, like to make up for it. Like they're just perfect, man. I love watching Cotter for Origin for that same reason. Like I just love his work ethic. And you look at Cotter, and he's not the most skilled player in the competition. He doesn't sort of have that, but what he does have is just that heart and grit. That's just you can't teach. You can't teach that. And everyone and every coach and every club wishes they had players like him, and we don't.
And more often than not, he's in the right place at the right time, which is because of those attributes that you do speak about. The final player I want to give a bit of a rap to, and he is departing the club as well. You've already mentioned him, Kyle Felt. He sort of wound back the clock in a huge way this year. And we've obviously seen last year, Semi Valemei was massive for the club and played a really good role. And Manny, myself included, predicted Semi Valemei would win the wing spot over Kyle Feld. And Kyle Feld obviously must have had a huge preseason because he was given the jersey. Early on, I felt like it was to help get him to the record, and it felt like they were just going to wait for him to get the record and then get the switch happening. But then because of his form and just how good he was, he stayed there, and he had a huge year, a very underrated year. I have him right up there in terms of almost top 5 wingers in the year. He was that good, and it's going to be a huge loss, something that we can talk about later on. But his year as a whole, it was right up there when you rate wingers sort of end their season.
Yeah, 100%. Yep, great shout out. He was fantastic. He was a leader on the field too. I think though, him announcing that he was not playing this year and going to 2025 was kind of like a weight off his shoulders. It was like a sense of freedom, and he certainly looked like he had that sense of freedom. He's like, I owe this club, and I think he sort of played with this view of like, I owe this club a lot. I'm going to go out and give it back to them. And he was he just was. How good was he? And I hope the Cowboys really gave him a really big send off in closed doors, because what he was able to produce across his career, but then also to finish like he did, it's phenomenal. Yeah, full props and kudos to him.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add to the Cowboys before we get into the question side of things?
Yeah, look, I think this year they've showed a lot of positives, and with all the negatives that we've talked about, I want to sort of give some really key. They've got the key spots locked down, haven't they? Like, the fullback with Drinkwater, now with Dearden, underrated dude, and Robson, man. Like, God, I really, really like him. He's so underrated, but you just noticed that he just got named in an Australian jersey, right? So yeah. Like he played for Australia in the international series, yet we all forget about Reece Robson and didn't even get a mention until just now. Like, he had a really good year, and they've locked that down. I think they blooded some really good rookies too across the year, and their list is really good. I think they've got to be able to plug some holes with their forward pack. I think that's probably their biggest issue they've got. And I can't think if they've got anyone coming in, but I haven't really looked that far into their list about what's happening next year. But I think the biggest question for moving forward is to how they can lock down that forward pack, particularly because that's where I think a lot of their defensive deficiencies are. A lot of teams just run it at them and just bully them. And that's where they become issues. So I think that's a really big play that they've got to be able to try and fix next year, and it was shown this year as a deficiency.
Definitely. Let's get into some of the questions here. So quick rapid fire end of the questions. Key moment of the year For mine, I'm just going to put, we just mentioned it before, the captaincy change, the split captaincy of Cotter and Dearden. I thought obviously was instrumental in the season that they had. It was done right at the start of the year. No coincidence that they were both, as I said, their best players for the year. Great choice by Todd Payton and the club. Well done, Trav.
Nice call. I think the two wins against the Roosters and Penrith, round 13, round 17, were really key moments. So that round 13, particularly one, was off the back of a few losses that they've had, that 5 losses in a row up to round 10. They were down 14-4 at halftime and ended up beating the Roosters 18-16. Was a key pivotal moment. Just what it did was it just showed that they were they're there. They've got the talent. They can beat anybody at any given time, but can also lose at any given time. But so those 2 wins were key moments.
What about your surprise packet of the year?
So I've gone Captain Ahoy, co-Captain Ahoy. Sorry. So the Dearden Cotter, I think, was just a really good surprise.
Yeah.
The way they played, they certainly took them that leadership step. Certainly gave them another pep in their step and just another kick another cog in their gear that they needed to become stars, because Dearden's legitimately become a star, and we all know that we all thought Dearden had this talent. Like, they picked him up and we all knew that he was a good player, but did we think he was going to be a superstar like he's becoming? I don't think so.
Geez, the Broncos wish they had him right now, I'll tell you that much. For mine, I had Cole Felt. Again, I thought he was almost written off after last year and having some of the other players around him really step up when he wasn't there, and came back with a bang and did not let his jersey. I did not give his jersey away all year. It was a huge, incredible year from a guy who I thought was, to be honest, past it. And what a comeback it was. Who needs a big 2025? I looked at this one and I think it's Jake Clifford. I think they've gone all in on him, and I've never been completely sold on Jake Clifford's game. I know he had a good game when he came in. Then I thought he sort of faded away a little bit with partnership with Dearden, and I thought Dearden was the one that completely controlled that. I think Dearden will play more of a 7 role moving forward, and it's up to Clifford to really work into this team and work into this combination now. Dearden, we're saying, is almost an elite player in this competition now. When you're playing alongside one of those elite players, you need to make sure you make them look as good as they are and not get in their way. Let them do what they can do. It's up to Jake Clifford now to make sure he can play that role. I think that role will suit him, not having the pressure on him to steer the team around and things like that. It might suit him a lot better than we've seen in the past at his other ventures. So hopefully he can live up to it, but I think that means it's a huge year next year for Jake Clifford. Trav?
Good call. I like it. I've gone big 2025 Todd Payton. Has to. He's got a lot of problems. He's got a list, right? He's got the list. They've just come off a 5th place. They need to figure out how to play some defense, but they've got to figure out how to replace Townsend, Felt, Holmes, Finafuaki, Granville, potentially McLean, and Tolo's another year older. That's a lot of work. He's got a lot to do in the preseason, and I just don't know if Todd Payton's shown that he can do it. So he's got a big 2025, or he's going to lose his job.
Wow, what a preseason that's going to be. I wonder if you do some sandhills and things like that. The player of the year for the North Queensland Cowboys, I've gone, I feel like it's between the two. I've gone Tom Dearden for mine. I think his back half of the year, his form really just edged him forward in that department. And I'll give it to Tom Dearden. Trav?
I've gone Drinkwater. 25 try assists, 15 line breaks, 161 average meters. He's got 10 tries, kicked 7 goals. I went Drinkwater for the player of the year.
Good shout. He didn't really get much mention at all as well. He had a really good year as well. So great shout there. And just always coming back in there, Trav, with that little sweep play and just getting it nicely tucked away down to fine leg and down to the boundary for 4, getting into the cricket season there. That is it. Hope you enjoyed the Cowboys episode. Again, let us know your thoughts around the season, whether you're a Cowboys fan or you're not. If we're on the money, if we're off, that's all good. Let us know. You have done in the past. It's just an odd year sort of in a way, but let us know your thoughts. Give us some love on social media as always. like the podcast, star it, hit that bell icon in the top with that, the Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to it. And we will see you again shortly.